So, where did Jesus go for 40 days and 40 nights? And how can those 40 days and 40 nights be significant for our life now and what it has to teach us? Stay tuned, and I will tell you why. Welcome back. My name's Angie. I'm your soul alignment mentor, bringing you an intuitive message from Spirit to help you live your most aligned, authentic life on this earth, manifesting your desires and stepping into your purpose. So, I often get messages in my spirit just randomly of things that might pertain to our life. And as someone who spent a significant time in religion in the church, I am pretty well diverse in understanding the Bible. I spent 3 years in Bible college learning about the Bible. I have a degree in biblical studies. I also study the Bible thoroughly throughout my time in the church, where I also taught Sunday school, helped with youth group, helped lead the women's ministry, and pretty much showed up for anything else that was going on in the church as well. I was a dedicated Christian for sure. There was no doubt in my mind that I was saved. I had accepted Jesus multiple times into my heart. Anytime that I sinned, I was back at the altar confessing and asking for forgiveness so I could have Jesus in my heart and be the most aligned human Christian that I possibly could. However, in all of my efforts, I still struggled with much shame and much about like a ton of self-hate, and really truly did not understand who God was, who I was, and even who Jesus was. And so I want to share a little bit about, as you awaken, how the role of maybe Jesus's life could play into your awakening process, especially if you are a deconstructed Christian or a Christian that is going through deconstruction. I want you to know that I understand and that it is a very hard process to go through, especially when you have been taught certain things about God and about heaven and about hell. But the things that you were taught were not always accurate in the church. And I think as you work through your deconstructing, you will understand a little bit more about that. Now, those of you that have already moved through this, you're probably well advanced and know things beyond what I might be talking about today. But this is a message that I felt Spirit wanted to share. And what came to me was the ebb and flow of life that we go through. And particularly when you start to go through a spiritual awakening and you start to awaken to more truths of who you are, as far as understanding yourself as a human, a spirit, and then the divine energy of God and source energy, and the difference of what that divine energy really means to us. And underneath that divine energy, all of the spirits that have been created out of it. So if you were to imagine God being an energy, just a ball of light, that ball of light creates more of itself. And the more of itself are the spirits, are the planets, are the stars, are all the things in the universe that are yet to be discovered. The plants, the dirt, the air, all the particles of dust, like all of it is God source energy recreating itself and expanding the universe. And so we have this really amazing role as a human where we come to earth and we live in contrast from our own selves, from our own identity, which is spirit, which is pure source energy, which is full of love, light, and has really none of this negative stuff here on earth that we are experiencing. And so as I was meditating this morning, and I was getting ready, and this message has come through several times to me, and I don't think I've shared this one before, but I was having the memories and the visions of Jesus going into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And over the years, as I've pondered this and thought more about Jesus' life and what he really was trying to convey to us and teach, and what his message is really about loving one another, about basically awakening, spiritual awakening, coming back into your true, most authentic self, remembering who you are, remembering you are source energy God. When he would speak about, when he was asked, are you God? He would say, I am. And so therefore he was basically being an example for us of us being the I am as well. And so if you look at Jesus's life, we are missing a huge part of it from his childhood. So supposedly he's born in a manger. And, who knows if this is an accurate story. There really was no way to record these things. And this is a whole nother tangent that I won't go on, but even the recordings that we do have are not accurate because they were not even written until about 100 to 300 years after Jesus transitioned from this earth. And so the accuracy of the stories are not necessarily the issue in this, but the message of what the story brings us is how we can use Jesus' life as an example for our awakening and coming back into our authentic self. So he's born in a manger, and then we have hardly anything about his early childhood. And then around age 12, we hear a little bit more about him. And he's with his parents. His father, Joseph's a carpenter, his mother, Mary. And all these, significant stories about them traveling to Jerusalem, and then him being found in the temple. They had lost him for 2 days as they traveled back home, and they went back and found him in the temple learning from the spiritual teachers, basically. And what I really like about having the ability to intuitively hear from spirit is, even when I'm talking now, I can hear messages coming through where I'm hearing a message that even that story is a little distorted, because it is very possible that Jesus was, listening to spiritual teachers, but in a religious understanding, in my own understanding, the way I saw that story was like he was at the church and he was listening to the preacher, kind of thing. But even now, as I'm talking intuitively, I'm just hearing in my spirit, and maybe this is Jesus coming through to talk to us, but that this is more so like what we would find now, even in modern day, like in Buddhist temples, or where there was teachings about having, humbleness and love and living aligned with your spirit, and the law of one, and manifestation and love, making love your priority in this life. Because if you look at the rest of his ministry on earth, it was all about love. It was all about aligning with your higher self. It was letting go of the ego's programming. It was stepping away from the ideas of who you needed to be based on the world's programming and ideas, and living aligned with your true self, your spirit self. And so we skip from age 12 up into his 30s, and this is where the story kind of begins to transform, where we know more about him and who he is. And one of the first things that we learn is that he goes into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights to be tempted, according to the scripture that we have now, by the devil. Here's what intuitively has been coming through to me for years, and I was being reminded of it again this morning, that these 40 days and 40 nights that Jesus spent in the desert were his time of basically what we would call modern day shadow work. And if you've gone through an awakening, if you've gone into this deep soul healing of this process of aligning back into your higher self, you kind of understand that there is a process of being separated from the world that we all go through, where we are a little bit isolated. When you go through an awakening, you might lose friends. You might quit doing things that you once did. Your desires change, where you no longer want to go and have drinks. You might want to go and do something like go on a hike with your friends. Things really shift for you when you go through this awakening, because it kind of points out areas of your life that are not aligned with your authentic self and your true self, that are actually pulling you away from being connected with your spirit. And so the significance of Jesus going into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights is a representation of us going into our desert time as well. Because the things that he was going through in that time where he was isolated from society was teaching him about his ego. It was teaching him about the things that his ego might desire. And it was preparing him for his ministry, so that when he went back out into society, he was more aligned with his spirit and his most authentic self, and not working out of the ego. And so, particularly those of us who would call ourselves star seeds or healers or light workers, or those of us that are feeling this inner pull to be a part of a teaching spirituality or an example or a healer, we often go through this process of an initiation, really, of going through our own desert time. And we might call it the dark night of the soul, or the shadow, or, all these labels that we might put on it. But it really is this time of isolation, of looking at our ego and seeing what's in our ego that cannot come with us into that next season of life, that we are meant to be sharing the light of who we really are and what the universe is really trying to convey. And right now we're in a big shift on the earth, where the new earth is shifting in, where humanity is going through a very, very big conscious awakening. This is the most humans ever that we have any understanding of, that my spirit team has told me, that has happened on planet Earth, where so many people are awakening to their truth. And if you've gone through this awakening, particularly if you did come from any type of religion, it is a little bit of a daunting and a scary process, because it really contradicts against everything that you have known yourself to be and the world to be as well. And so this process that Jesus went through is the example of what we go through in our spiritual awakening, of going through this tempting and seeing and going into the shadows of who we are, into our ego, so we can pull those out and not take those into our aligned life with our higher self. So Jesus, as he's in the desert for 40 days, I want you to really think about this, and I want you to picture this, because he purposely goes into the desert. He purposely, and from what, if the scripture has any accuracy, he purposely goes to be alone. And in this process, he begins to have these visions, and these supposedly the devil comes to show up. The devil in this represents the ego. And inwardly, Jesus likely knew that he had a mission on this earth, that he was meant to come and teach about spirituality. He was meant to teach about the alignment with our higher self, about the universe, about true source God energy. His mission was to be that representation of love on earth. But he had to go through the process of pruning his ego to get there. And so that would be the devil. So some of the things he was tempted with was his pride. And, if you are so powerful, then why don't you throw yourself off of this cliff and you will just fly? You will be fine. Not a bone will be hurt. And he had to go through this process of like, yes, I am that powerful. I do have that spirit inside of me. Source energy is that powerful. However, I am a human as well. And I need to release the idea that I am so powerful, I can do anything I want. Because sometimes when we get into that stage where we're out of alignment, where we're not both living our human life and our spiritual understanding, and we take the pride of the power of what our spirit can and can't do here on earth, we might take that into what we're doing in the ministry and kind of bulldoze our way through and control things and manipulate things, which in many ways is kind of what happened within religion with the teachings, where people did not align with their true self. They didn't do the shadow work or the ego work prior to becoming the leaders or the guides in the church setting, and therefore they began to lead with pride and greed and control instead of love and compassion and um, allowing spirit to truly work through them. And so he's being tempted in this way. And then, he's being tempted like, why don't you turn these stones into bread? If you're hungry, then that's what you can do. And of course, deep in his spirit, he knows this is possible. I can manifest anything I want to manifest. But if I'm going to work on my pride and I'm going to work on my ego, I need to understand what it feels like to be humble in this place of not having and maybe this lack. So some of us may go through moments where we have less than what we did. I remember a couple years ago when I was really struggling financially, I could not figure out what was going on. And at the time, I was working with someone that was trying to help me get my business going, and just could not figure out, like, how do I get the money in? How do I manifest more? Why is this not coming? And I actually was going negative in my bank account almost every other week. And I remember standing at the kitchen sink doing dishes one day, and it just suddenly, it just poof, it came into my intuition, into my spirit. If you don't go through this now, you will not understand how to manage what is coming to you. So in many ways, sometimes we go through things that feel really uncomfortable so that we can get to places where when we get what we want, we understand how to manage it better. But also, now I understand what it feels like to be in that lack. So I have compassion, and I have this love towards people that maybe won't be in the place that I am someday, or I am now, where I am the understanding that I am capable to manifest anything that I desire into my life. But when I manifest, am I manifesting for the purpose of love and the collective, and helping myself and others align with their true selves? Or am I manifesting and doing this for the purpose of greed and control and manipulation? So we go through these things where we're taught in our spirit what is really, really hidden deep inside of our ego. And in many ways, this is what Jesus was doing, was learning, this is a part of my ego. This is something that I could do if I don't work on this part of myself and let these shadows be exposed. So in this 40 days that Jesus spends in the desert, he's doing all this internal work. And then when he comes back, he's transformed. He's a new person. He begins his ministry. And his ministry is based out of that work that he did in that time, in the 40 days, in the 40 nights, within the shadow work and the ego. And so those of us that are going through this process of an awakening, of ascension, of becoming our highest self, of moving towards a mission or a life calling or purpose that we feel deep in our spirit that we're meant to do on this earth, we also will go through a training period and a process of basically deconstructing our ego. And we have to see those things that are hidden in our ego in order to release them. Unless we see them, we don't know they're there, and they continue to manage our life and run our life and control our life. And we may not even know that it is happening until we have those moments where we go deep into our own shadows, into our own ego, into the hidden parts of our story that we've stored deep inside of our bodies and in our souls and in the karma that we carry. to release that so that we do not project that back into the world in the work that we do. And the reason I share this is because I know there's a lot of people that, I was just listening to a friend who was just doing a live on Facebook, and she's talking about this really dark time that she's going through. But she also was able to see that this is part of her purpose and pushing her into where she's meant to do so that she can reprogram her ego and her mindset and her beliefs about herself as well to step into her purpose. Now, here's another message that Spirit is wanting to bring through right now, that to remind us that in this process, yes, we are becoming humble. Yes, we are kind of pulling the walls down of our ego so that we can be our spiritual self. But our spiritual self is not a lack. Our spiritual self is not in a place where it does not have power. It has power. It just does it in the energy of love. So humility does not equal lack. So, and this is something that we are taught in society, that when you work on yourself and when you become humble, many times we don't want to show our power because we don't want others to be hurt by it. However, humility does not equal lack. And so, in many ways, Jesus became more powerful than he was prior to this time in the 48 days and 40 nights because he stood up to things and his needs were met completely. He wasn't afraid to ask for help. He wasn't afraid to stay in people's homes. He wasn't afraid to walk away from people that did not serve him anymore. He stood in his power, and he did not let those around him influence him away from that power. So this is what we are going through, where we are learning who we are in our own spirit, in our own boundaries, in our own abilities, our gifts. But we have to find all that by going inward first. And when we come back out of this energy, which this is an ebb and flow, you guys, this is not a one-time thing. It will happen probably several times within your lifetime. But I will tell you, it is more likely the first season of this is going to be the hardest because it is new to you and it is a new process where your ego is really going to fight. But once you understand what it's like to go through that season and then another one kind of comes through, it goes so much quicker and easier because you understand, if I lean into this, if I allow myself to go into these dark areas, they'll release. But prior, when you're first going through it, it feels really, really hard because your ego has not been trained to understand that this is what's going on, that it's actually freeing you of these things and not trying to make you hurt even more than probably what you have been. And so as we go through these ebbs and flows, the flows become a little bit easier, where we go into the dark spaces of our ego and our shadow, and then we're more capable of coming out a little bit more brighter than we were prior to that, and a little bit more aligned with our higher self. So if you feel like you are in the process of going through the dark night of the soul or doing shadow work and you're in your 40 days and 40 nights, maybe it's been longer, maybe it's shorter, just realize that this is all for the purpose of you aligning with your true, most authentic and highest self so that you can step into the true power of who you really are and the mission that you have on this earth. Stay the course, get a healer to help you if you need, and continue to remember that love truly is all that matters. And as you go through this process, love will become the most prominent energy that you carry with you in this lifetime. I wish you all the best day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. I send you all the universal love. Namaste.